Samaritans and Jews hated each other like rat poison. I mean, they were always, if you saw a Samaritan driving down the street or walking down the street and you were driving, you'd lock your doors if you were in your car. Jews didn't like Samaritans. Samaritans didn't like Jews. They hated each other. They couldn't stand each other. They were persons from Samaria. Jews disliked Samaritans. Oh no, that's not a good thing. I didn't break it. I promise. I didn't break it. Anyway, they didn't like each other. Yeah, yes, Jake.
So it was kind of like, I guess, back in the 40s, after the Civil War and stuff, the blacks and the whites.
That's true. They were at disagreements. In this case, it was both race and religion. Because what happened, do you remember in the Old Testament, last semester we studied about, in the Old Testament, some of the Jewish people were taken away in captivity, in exile. And they only took the brightest and the best. They left the more common people, the dumber people, the idiots. They left all those behind, and they intermarried with other people from around other nations, and they became known as Samaritans. They were half-breeds. They were part Jewish, but part something else. And so the Jews, who like to keep themselves very pure, they looked down on the Samaritans. And the Samaritans hated the Jews because when the Jews came back, after a whole bunch of years, the Samaritans kind of thought that land was theirs. Now the Jews were coming back to take it over again. So they hated each other. They saw each other as foreigners and as outcasts. Neighbor, let's read this one together. A person we are called to love, anyone and everyone can be called our neighbor. Okay, so we have got the basics now. We're going to open our Bibles. And if you would, take your Bibles and turn to Luke. Luke. Luke chapter 10. Verse 25.
No.
Now, whenever you see a parable, there's usually what we call a context, something that's happened. What's happening in the world that makes Jesus tell this parable? Verses 25 to 28 tell us what happens so that Jesus tells this parable. When someone read for us verses 25 to 28. Yes, Eston.
This then awares the test of Jesus. Teacher, he said, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Eternal life. He said to him, what is written in the law? What do you read there? He answered, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, you have given the right answer to do this. You have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live.
Okay, so Jesus has said you shall love who?
Your neighbor.
Your neighbor, and who else?
Him.
God, love neighbor. Those two things. That's all those 10 commandments that we had you learn last semester. He said you can combine it into two. Love God, love neighbor. Now, the guy is a lawyer, and he likes to think of details. And so he's thinking, okay, now let's define who's my neighbor. Who do I have to be? If I'm here with the front row guys, okay, these guys, I'm saying, hey, they're my neighbors. We're good.
Too?
All right, but y'all, you know, it doesn't. I don't care about the rest of y'all. Y'all just go away. I don't care anything about except my neighbors. Well, that's what this lawyer thought. He thought the people he was with, right around him, the people he knew best, and probably the people who were just like him, he thought, those are my neighbors, but he wanted to make sure because he wants to do what's right. So, verse 29, would someone read to us just verse 29? Just verse 29. Caston. And then I'm going to have you read the next ones.
But wanting to justify himself, he asked Jesus, and who my neighbor?
All right. And Jesus replies. So that's the question. He's going to ask, who's my neighbor? And Eric, would you read now? 30 through 32. 30 and 32.
Jesus replied, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now by chance, a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side.
I remember this.
So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side.
Okay, so you got the two people. You got the priest, he walks by. Anybody ever hear of Billy Graham?
Oh, what?
Yeah, he's probably too okay. He was a famous preacher. Everybody, Joel Osteen, any of you see on
I've heard of that
TV?
name.
It would be like the
Is he
famous
a
preachers
singer?
walking, and they walk up by this guy, and they don't help him at all. And okay, who's the baddest person in the world today? You can think of.
Tommy.
Who?
My cousin.
Your cousin Tommy. Okay, picture then your cousin Tommy is the one who stops and helps the person. Or that little short Korean guy that wants to blow the world up. You know, you never think. I'll wait. We're gonna wait till everybody's quiet. I can't hear Christy, and she's going to say something very important.
In my opinion, it would be Obama.
Okay, all right. So you picture someone in your mind that you just wouldn't trust. You wouldn't want to. You don't trust them. But that's the person who ends up helping. So let's all read together verse 33. Everybody read together. Everybody up there, page 33. Not page 33. Page 1720. Verse 33. We're going to read together verse 33. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. Now you can't tell this by reading the Bible in English, but the word for neighbor, in the language the Bible was written in, which was what? Who remembers what language the Bible was? The New Testament was written in.
Latin.
No, Greek. New Testament written in Greek. You know what the word neighbor means in Greek? To come near somebody, to come close to somebody. And what did this guy do?
He came close.
He came close. He came near to him. He was moved with pity. All right. And now here's what he's going to do. Would someone read 34 through 35? Who has not read yet? Christy.
Okay. I got it. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him, and when I come back, I will repay you whatever more you spend."
Okay, so that's what the Samaritan, the guy everybody hated, all the Jewish people would have hated this guy. So that's the person that he ends up, helping, the guy who's been beaten up. Here's what Jesus' point is. Look at verse 36. Which of these three do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? And he said, the one who showed mercy. And Jesus said to him, go and do likewise. By the way, if you look on the left side of that, in your study Bible, you've got study notes. These are things not written by the Bible readers, but tell us a little bit. Look on the left-hand side of page 720, and it tells you about a Samaritan. Would someone read that paragraph for us? Yes, Eric.
This is a story about being a neighbor, and it is also about the important contributions made by outsiders. The last time Samaritans were mentioned in Luke 9:51 through 56, they refused to welcome Jesus. The fact that a Samaritan stopped to help the man who was beaten would have surprised and perhaps angered first-century readers.
Okay, so they would not have liked Jesus for telling this parable, because he's telling a good story about a bad guy. Caston, would you look on the next page, 1721, at the top, there's also a little note in the right-hand side of the page about chapter 10, verse 37, the one who showed mercy. What's it tell us there?
The one who showed him mercy. The man's answer is the key to the parable. Being a neighbor is about what you actually do for a person in need.
Okay, so one of the things that we know about this parable is it wants to show you what you do for a neighbor. Okay, if you're going to love God, one of the ways you show you love God best is by what? By loving your neighbor. Those two things go hand in hand. That was the whole point of the parable. We seem to know that today because we've read the Bible. But in those days, people did not know that. They didn't know what it meant to love your neighbor, and especially this guy who was the lawyer didn't know it. And for us today, we know the story, but sometimes it's hard for us to be neighbor, especially to people who aren't like us. Who's not like us? If you go to school in the morning, who's not like you?
Josh.
All right, Josh. Yes, okay, Josh, not like you. All right. Who else? What else?
Mandy.
Mandy. All right.
Thanks.
Who else is not like you?
Carly and Emily.
Okay, all right. So there are people all over the school who are not like you. And there are people all over the school, there are a lot of people who really could use a friend. And there are a lot of people you would never be friends to if God were coming tomorrow and blowing up the world or taking us to heaven. You would never be friends to. But sometimes you're being called to be a friend to somebody you don't even like or who is very much unlike you. Okay, quiz show.